Dr. Ben Carson joining us now, former Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, and still a Donald Trump supporter, which is why we're talking to Dr. Carson today. And we thank you for coming on. And we played a clip of you on the program yesterday talking about support in the evangelical community for the former president. Can he get to that number, 51? I mean, is it that big of a difference from 2016? What are you seeing in Iowa?
Well, people have had a chance since 2016 to see him in action. It's not what he says, it's what he does that's important. He signed more executive orders with reference to religious freedom than any other president, probably more than all of the others put together. He's the first president to attend a pro-life rally, the pro-life march. He has just been a friend of religion and of faith, and helped us at HUD to remove a lot of the regulatory barriers that kept faith-based organizations from doing what they do best, and that is helping the indigent and the homeless and people of that nature.
You must understand that while people would hear that and that have followed Donald Trump over the years and said, really, he's a friend to religion and faith, there have been so many questions raised, as you know, and you've heard these questions about how people of faith could support someone with Donald Trump's character. I was reading the New York Times had a big article about it this morning where they talked to a bunch of pastors, and there was one quoted who said, how could people claim to have these values support someone who, quote, is so degenerate in their public life and speech? I mean, you were saying it's not what he says, but what he does, but, also what he's been accused of, all these crimes and all the rest. I mean, what's your answer to that question in that community?
Well, I suspect a lot of those same people, had they been a contemporary of David, King David in the Bible, would have said, how can you possibly say that this man is a man after God's own heart? He committed adultery, he committed murder, he did all kinds of things. We need leadership, not a Boy Scout. We need leadership. And it's critical in our country at this point in time. And a lot of people don't like Trump because of the way that he talks. But what I say to them is it better to have somebody whose language is coarse and whose policies improve your life, or somebody who has a silver tongue whose policies destroy your life?
What about DeSantis? Does he have a decent amount of support in that community? People thought he would, but if those numbers we showed are right, I guess it really is, to your point, the former president who's taking the evangelicals in Iowa. Why is it Trump and not DeSantis? Because it's not like there's not a choice for the evangelical community. They could go with another Republican candidate. So why Trump?
Well, I was in Europe a couple of months ago listening to what a lot of the Europeans think about America.
Right.
And they are frightened. They think we've lost our minds. They say, well, if you guys go down, what's going to happen to us? And right now, at this critical juncture, we need someone who is a proven quantity. We know he's going to do great things. We don't know that about any of the others. They may be great, but can we take that chance? And I think that's what the voters are saying.
I want to talk to you about one other topic while you're on, which I think is interesting. We introduced you as someone who's supporting President Trump, former President Trump. I know you worked in his administration as well. Now, there's been some talk that maybe if he indeed is the nominee again, that you might be on the ticket with him, that it might be, you might be up to be his running mate. I want you to listen to what Mick Mulvaney said. Of course, as you know, was Trump's chief of staff for some time in the White House. On this network, he's a contributor here at NewsNation. And here's what he said about that topic. Take a listen to this.
The name that I'm hearing now being added to the list, it's not like it's the top of the list, but it's on the list. We've talked about the regular cast of characters, Kristi Noem, Kim Reynolds, although she's now endorsed DeSantis.
For possible vice
presidents, now Elise Stefanik, Ben Carson. Ben Carson, because he fits a new characteristic, which is Trump might be looking for someone who doesn't want to immediately start running for president.
Okay, so since those comments were made, President Trump himself has said that he knows, apparently, who he's picking for vice president. Has he spoken with you about it, Dr. Carson?
I probably would not be wise to divulge what we've talked about. But, the key thing right now is to get the right kind of leadership in place. Everything else, I think, is a distraction. There'll be plenty of time to do that.
Would you accept the vice presidential nomination if he offered it to you? Let me ask it that way.
Again, a distraction. I understand it would be nice to make some news, but I really think we need to concentrate on getting the right person in place and not worry about the other things right now.
Thanks so much for watching. Just go to joinnn.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.